In the Middle Ages, the scene was simple. A castle on a hill, a feudal lord who owned the land, and peasants working it in exchange for protection. The peasant was not free, not entirely a slave, but not free either. He was bound to the land, to low wages, to debt, to fear. Now ask yourself a disturbing question. Has that truly changed, or have only the names changed? This is not a video about history. It's about the present, about a system we are told is capitalist, free, competitive, yet whose deep structure may be closer to feudalism than we imagine. Welcome to Feudalism 2.0. 800 years ago, a peasant woke at dawn not because he chose to, but because he was born into a system that gave him no alternative. The land was not his, the harvest was not his, the decision was not his. He worked simply to remain alive. He was called a serf in a feudal order ruled by a minority that owned the land, owned the authority, and owned the future. But the question rarely asked is this: did that system truly end, or did it simply change its name? Today, no one officially forces you to serve a feudal lord. No sword rests on your neck. You are free on paper. Yet you wake up every morning to pay rent on a home you do not own, to repay loans you did not entirely choose under perfect freedom, and to function inside a structure you cannot exit without risking everything. The only difference is that the chain has become invisible. Feudalism in its classical form was simple. A king owned the land, nobles administered it, and peasants worked it in exchange for protection. The system was clear, harsh, yes, but honest about its hierarchy. Power was concentrated, wealth was static, and social mobility was nearly impossible. Then came the industrial revolutions. Absolute monarchies fell. Capitalism emerged. We were told humanity was now free, that markets were open to all. No one was bound to land anymore. You could sell your labor, choose your job, build your future. But this is where the real story begins. In old feudalism, land was the source of power. Today, what is the source of power? Assets, real estate, capital, data, technology. Ownership did not disappear, it transformed. The feudal lord no longer wears armor, but a tailored suit. He no longer resides in a stone castle, but manages a multinational corporation. In the past, the peasant gave a portion of his harvest. Today, the worker gives a portion of his life, his time, his energy, his health, in exchange for a salary that barely sustains his place inside the system. Is this an exaggerated comparison? Perhaps, but let's look calmly. In the Middle Ages, the peasant could not easily leave the land because he had no alternative. Today, can you easily leave your job? What happens if you stop paying? What happens if you lose your income? The system no longer requires iron shackles. Financial anxiety is enough. Debt is the modern form of feudal attachment. In the past, a peasant was born into a class he could not escape. Today, many are born into a structure of debt, student loans, mortgages, credit cards. A person begins adult life already indebted. He works not to become free, but to repay. And as he repays, new obligations appear. The difference is that feudalism openly acknowledged its class structure. Today, the system is presented as an open opportunity. If you fail, the problem is you. This is the most dangerous shift, transferring responsibility for systemic constraints onto the individual. In feudalism, the lord owned the land and the peasant owned his labor. Today, major corporations own the platforms, the infrastructure, the markets. You own your skills, which often have little value outside those platforms. Consider the digital economy. Millions work through applications they do not own: drivers, content creators, sellers. The platform sets the rules, the commission, the access to audiences. If the algorithm changes, your income changes. If your account is closed, your work disappears. You are independent inside a digital castle you do not control. In feudalism, protection was granted in exchange for loyalty. Today, job stability is granted in exchange for full compliance with market rules. The difference is that the castle is now in the cloud. There is another deeper similarity: concentration of wealth. In the feudal system, a very small percentage owned most resources. Today, global wealth reports show a similar pattern. A tiny fraction of the population controls a massive share of global assets. It may not be legal feudalism, but it is an economic reality that creates enormous gaps in influence. The question is not whether we live in the Middle Ages. Of course we do not. Technology, medicine, civil rights, all are real advancements. But the more important question is whether the structure of power has fundamentally changed or merely reshaped itself. In the past, the path to power was owning land. Today, the path to power is owning the infrastructure of the system itself: banks, platforms, energy networks, data. Whoever owns the infrastructure sets the terms. And as systems become more complex, they become harder to see clearly. Feudalism was visible. You could see the castle. You could see the hierarchy. Today, inequality hides behind numbers, stocks, and indexes. Modern individuals believe they are free because they choose between products, jobs, cities. But do they choose the framework itself? Do they choose the fundamental rules of the game? In feudal times, the peasants did not choose the system. Today, how many people choose the financial structure they live under? The currency, interest rates, housing prices, taxation, inflation? These shape daily life, yet decisions are made far from those affected. This does not mean everything is a conspiracy. It means power has become structural. Not a single ruler, but networks of institutions. Not a king, but mechanisms. And here lies the critical difference. Modern feudalism does not require overt mass repression, because people are bound through essential needs: housing, healthcare, education, all tied to markets. Exiting the market means risking security itself. In the Middle Ages, rebellion was obvious. Today, rebellion is more complicated. If you withdraw, you pay the price immediately. The system is large enough to continue without you. Yet the picture is not entirely dark. There are crucial differences that cannot be ignored. Social mobility today is possible, even if difficult. Technology has opened doors that never existed. Access to knowledge is no longer confined to a single class. Legal rights have evolved. To equate the modern era literally with the Dark Ages would be simplistic. But the purpose here is not to claim we live in a new medieval age. It is to understand how systems of power evolve without disappearing. History does not move in straight lines, and power does not disappear, it evolves. The real question is not whether feudalism has returned, but whether we are capable of recognizing patterns of power before they become too entrenched to challenge.